Thank you so much, Gracie. Karibuni sana. We are very few, I'll even mention names. Karibu, our hosts. Karibu Gracie, Karibu Benson, our speaker, Elizabeth CV, who has no mic, and Evelyn. So this is Linda Vijana. We have this session every first Friday of the month. And today we're having a very special topic about the budget making process in Kenya. And we felt it was a good topic considering what is going on. And we have all turned lawyers. Everyone is reading the Constitution, including my 13-year-old son. He actually carried my copy because there's so many things that are going on, and you want to know, is it constitutional? Is someone telling us something that is contrary to what should be done? So this is very timely, the topic. And moving forward, I guess we need more of this. So Linda Vijana is here to communicate scientific and biblical values and truths to the young. And we have been around for 2 years now. This should be a third year. And I am happy to be here to be moderating. And I wish to invite our speaker, Mr. Benson Sagom, who is a lawyer holding a bachelor's degree in law. On campus, he served in various leadership positions, including serving as the president of law school at Africa Nazarene University. Presently, Benson works at Triple Oak Law LLP Advocates in Nairobi. Prior to joining Triple Oak Law, Benson worked for Kenyans for Justice and Development, KEJUDE, Trust as a legal researcher and policy analyst. He is one of the petitioners who successfully challenged the Affordable Housing Levy in court um, in the Finance Act 2023. So karibu sana Benson. Take us through this session.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope I can be seen and be heard at the same time.
Yes, we can.
Thank you very much. As I have been introduced, that is me. I am so happy to be here to share my knowledge on the subject, the budget making process. Um, I think I will just begin straight away. I prepared a PowerPoint presentation because whatever we're going to talk about here relates more to processes. So the human brain or mind is more visual than audio, and I think it would enhance your ability to grasp anything, if any. So I'm trying to upload the presentation. I'm sharing my screen. I hope you people can see it.
Yes, we.
All right. So the topic I was given to work on or work with is the budget making process in Kenya. So what I want us to do is to understand it. So I tweaked the topic a bit to make it read understanding the budget making process in Kenya. So at the end of this, I would want each attendee or anyone listening to this recording or recorded version of this meeting to understand the budget making process in Kenya. Um, why is this talk very important to every person in Kenya? Why is it important to understand the budget making process? The budget making process relates or and concern the national budget, which is the most important thing in any governance. It is about the planning, it is about development. And what the budget does, as we're going to see, uh, is that it provides an outline for the government how the government is going to be using the finances and the strategies that the government is proposing to use those finances in the upcoming year to do particular things which the budget must state. So why is this talk then important? We are all stakeholders by virtue of being Kenyans, by virtue of being citizens, by virtue of being adults. or whichever position you hold wherever you are, whether you are a government official, civil society, and anybody, you must understand the process so that you are able to see and uphold transparency. You are able to tell and determine whether there is accountability. And when we have all these, we will be ensuring effective use of the public resources. Public resources means that every resource in Kenya, by virtue of them being raised through taxes and gifts that are given to states and all that, they belong to the public. It does not belong to a particular individual, it belongs to the general public. So, all these are concerning the effective use and management of public resources. So, that is why this talk is very, very important. So, if you're wondering whether there's anything you're going to come with to get from this meeting, then trust me, there's something. So we've had all those noises around budget at the national level, budget at the county level, budget. The budget is a very basic concept, and it is the concept of uh, basically a plan that anyone can have for a defined period. So if you're talking about the budget of your house, then we have your house, which it can be a budget for a 1 year, budget for 1 day, budget for 1 week. The same way you do your budgets in your house or any other place. The same way you do your budgets in your churches. If you have a church that does one, that is called budget. In the context of democracy, in a democratic society like Kenya, then we have the country's financial plan for each year. This financial plan for each year is what has been called the budget. So we have the national budget for Kenya. As you may be aware, in Kenya we have the devolved system of governance. So we have county governments, 47 of them, and we have the national government. Just like I began by saying that you can budget even within your own household. So in the two levels of government, we usually have the national budget, and later we have the county budgets. It is usually done for a defined period, which is 1 year. Another thing you need to understand when we are discussing budget is that a budget is just a tool, but the tool does the main thing or one main thing, which is allocation of money collected by the government. How this money is to be allocated to who, why, when, and where. That is what a budget answers. So I think it's common knowledge, the sources of government revenue, which is not a topic for today, but all those monies once collected, they must be allocated to particular people, functions, activities, and all that. So that is the instrument that the government uses to do that is called the budget. Number three, the budget therefore comprises two main components. The first component is the government programs. So from the budget, we're going to see what are the programs the government is having. The second thing is the activities for which public resources will be utilized. Of all those programs, what are the activities? And like we're going to see later, people should be having a say regarding where to allocate the funds, when to allocate the funds, why to allocate the funds, and who to give those funds. We're going to see that later. But I want us to understand what a national budget is and what components make a budget. Another thing I want to talk about in terms of still defining a budget is its purpose. Why do we need a budget at the national level as a government? We need the national budget for so many reasons, which I can categorize into three. Number one, for us to be able to allocate resources to meet the government objectives. When people come to election periods, people come up with policies in terms of manifestos. They tell you when we go in, we are going to implement these. All those things are usually converted into objectives of a government. When the government comes in, then they need to have a budget spelling out clearly how the allocation will be done. Number two, the budget serves the purpose of ensuring fiscal responsibility and sustainable economic growth. What that means is that we are able to be held into account in terms of saying this is what we need to do for this particular period, and this is why it is necessary at this moment as opposed to another time or earlier. The third thing, in terms of broad description of the purpose of a budget, is that if we do all that, then we are doing what is called planning. So you plan for development projects and you plan for services. I also don't want to be too complicated because while discussing this, I assume that we understand so many things, including the difference between current expenditure, recurrent expenditure, and all those concepts, which I don't want to bring here, as it will be confusing. So, having conceptualized what a national budget is, I believe then that up to now, somebody who did not understand what a budget is have must be having some bit of an image of why it could be important to have the national budget. So the national budget is not a gift that a particular regime gives to the citizens. It is not to be done at somebody's wish. The national budget is actually provided for in the legal infrastructure within our constitutional democracy. The first point is the in the legal framework is the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Under that constitution, we have Article 201 that provides for what I term as minimum principles of public finance. The irreducible principles. It says that when we are dealing with public finance in any context, there must be openness, there must be accountability, the there must be prudency, in terms of the use of those funds. There must be public participation, which is going to form a big part of what we're going to discuss here. Then there must be responsible financial management and clear fiscal reporting. I think I summarize them in self-explanatory words. So that is the Constitution. Again, in my discussion, I don't want to be, I'll not be discussing most of these provisions because I'll risk delving into a lot of legalese, which may not be helpful. Um, the After the Constitution of Kenya 2010, which underpins any other piece of legislation, rules that govern public finance management in Kenya, we have the Public Finance Management Act. This Public Finance Management Act provides for the guidelines um, for management of public funds. There are also the Public Finance Management Rules that were enacted 2015. The Public Finance Management Act was enacted in 2012, just 2 years after the enactment of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. There were regulations which were as a result of a process that began in the year 2006. That's a story for another day. So, what I say regarding all these pieces of legislation regulating public finance is that they have provided a prescriptive rules and steps to be followed. When I say prescriptive, I mean they leave nothing to chance. It says what is to be done when, how, and why. You're going to see why I say that later as we go on. But the key word here is that it provides for a prescriptive. It is prescriptive in nature, just like our Constitution of Kenya 2010, prescriptive in nature, such that nothing is left to discretionary steps by any person in public office. Um, I think that was important so that again, another thing I want to say is that the Public Finance Management Act is one of those pieces of legislation in Kenya that adopted the plain language system of drafting. It is written or drafted in layman's language. You don't need to be a lawyer to understand it. You only need to know and understand English.
Benson,
Yes.
can you make the screen, the slide full screen, please?
All right. Let me do that. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
I hope I know how to do it. So I was saying about the prescriptive nature of those particular laws. Can you see the screen still?
Yes, but you didn't make it full screen.
Okay. Um, you give me a second.
Or you just add the size of the text just a bit on your bottom right, where it's at 64%, make it 100.
Bottom
Bottom
right.
right. Yeah, I think it's bottom right. The other opposite side of your slides. The bottom opposite of your slide list. Yes, that one there. It's 64%. You make it 100.
I'm very sorry about that.
Good. Thank
How
you.
about
Thank you.
now?
Yes, yes, it's perfect now.
Good. Um, okay. So I was emphasizing the aspect of the prescriptive nature of the rules governing public finance in Kenya, and I said the Public Finance Management Act is written in plain language. You only need to know how to read and understand English. You'll be able to follow. So, having said all that, what I believe is the most important thing that I want to state here and discuss in detail is the process of making the budget in Kenya, and the process of arriving at now the now infamous finance bill or finance act, which is an annual exercise. Again, maybe I also need to emphasize that, like we have seen, the budget is an annual exercise. So the budgeting process is an annual exercise. We had it last year. It is there this year. It will be there next year, perhaps until eternity, or until we go back to see our maker. So that is why it is also very, very important, because this thing does not happen just because there's been noise today. It happens each year. So I have come up with what I call the clockwork of the budget making in Kenya. Some of the timelines that everybody ought to know. Um, I would also put it the important budget timelines. Still saying the same thing. So everybody ought to know that when we hear that there is a national budget, it does not happen in a day. It takes over 343 days to prepare a national budget, or to go through all those processes that are prescribed by statutes. So I'm going to give you all those timelines, and the timelines start running from August 30th. Maybe to put it in a better way so that you are able to relate, today we are talking about the national budget 2024-2025 in Kenya. The process has ended, and we have a finance bill. The finance bill resulted to a finance act. Some people say it is an act, some people say it is not an act, which the president refused to assent to and returned to parliament. Okay? Some people would argue it ends there. Some people would argue it begins there. And you're going to see, you're going to take which, to say which part you take, or which side you believe in. So just know that by 30th of August each year, we are beginning a new process of arriving at a new budget or a new finance bill. I don't want to be mentioning finance bill again, but I believe it is towards the tail end of the process of making a budget. So, having mentioned it now, I believe you'll be enthused to want to know more. So, the process begins on 30th August each year. What happens on 30th August of each year? There is what is issued called the budget circular. This is done by the National Treasury. What does the circular do? The circular sets out um, uh, what the government perhaps would want to achieve in that particular year. Then it announces that we are kicking off the process that will yield to a national budget. So it is prescribed by statute, and it only announces that we are preparing for the next financial year's budget. That's all that it does in summary. What follows is that by October 21st, the national budget is submitted and reviewed. Um, this one is done by something they call budget review and outlook paper. So that budget review and outlook paper is submitted to the parliament. What does the paper do? The paper provides a review of the previous budget and economic frameworks and those microeconomic and resource framework for the next financial year. So they're basically saying this is what we achieved last time, this is where we are as of now, and perhaps this should inform where we are going to in the next budget. So October 21st, that one happens. By December 31st, there is the submission of Auditor General's report on finance and expenditure. As you may be aware, the Constitution provides that after every, at least, or within 6 months after the passing of the national budget, the Auditor General must come out and give us an audit. And this audit, the Auditor General will report on that audit, stating whatever findings they have in that report. And that is why you see that auditor's report is also an annual thing. So by 31st of December, they provide for that, they provide that report detailing whatever they found out in the previous year's report. I think you've seen the auditor's report doing rounds in the media presently, where they're talking about some of the discrepancies here and there in the last, that is 2023-2024 national budget for the 2023-2024 financial year. Today we are talking about 2023, 2024, 2025, and it has been passed. So it means therefore that by 31st of December this year, there must and there should be an auditor's report. It is to be noted that that 6 months is not the mark. It is the, when it says within, it means then it can come earlier, but not later than 6 months. After that, we have 15th of January or February the following year. On 15th of January the following year, there must be submission of the budget policy statement. There must also be submitted the medium-term debt strategy and the draft division of revenue bill. These are very heavy terms, but there is something I want you to take note of. What you need to take note of here from the issue around a budget policy statement and medium-term debt strategy is that is that how softly can I put it? How softly can I put it? There is usually what we call the division of revenue bill. I think we heard a lot about it in the year 2021. It is the bill that provides for how revenue is going to be allocated among the counties in Kenya. We also have the medium-term debt strategy, where the auditor says, I mean, the report, the budget says, this is the debt we have, this is how we are going to manage it in the medium term. We also have the budget policy statements. I'm just trying to find out how can I break this down, especially when I'm not talking to parliamentarians or lawyers. But what must be noted is that these must be considered within 14 days and must be introduced into in the form of a bill. So after all these have been considered, then you enact you draft a bill which is going to form a law, and this bill must be brought into parliament within or before March 10th of that particular year. What follows after that is that they submit what is called an annual revenue and expenditure estimates. This one is expressly provided for under Article 220 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010. It does not provide for the dates, but these dates have been provided under the Public Finance Management Act and the Public Finance Management Regulations. The Constitution just gives an overview, then those pieces of legislation have given life or into the provisions of the Constitution. So these estimates are reviewed by the departmental committees, and a report is prepared for the House to approve. There have been a lot of questions regarding the review by those departmental committees, which I'm going to discuss, though I skipped it because I want you to understand some of the important things you should be looking out for. I'll be going back to discuss some of these committees and stakeholders that you must take note of. So when you hear of any activity, you will be required to participate. So what they do is that they consider that, then they approve them. How they approve them, when should they approve them? It starts from April 30th, but cannot go beyond 15th of May. So what happens in May? In May, there is the public hearings by the Budget and Appropriations Committee. These public hearings are hard. This committee is a committee in Parliament, National Assembly. So you go, they ask for people to give them opinions on the budget, and they consider all those. So what do they do with the opinions? They incorporate those opinions into the budget for the approval of the House. We are going to discuss, is it a mere public relations exercise when we talk about public participation? When we say incorporate, do they incorporate or they just do it for the sake of the procedures? But you must know that that process begins or ought to begin in mid-May, usually 17th, 15th. Now, I'll be asking a question whether you heard anything regarding the budget and appropriations this year when we were discussing or when we were coming up with the national budget. Did you hear about this process? Okay, that's a question we're going to answer at the end of it. Um, we are in mid-May. You go to mid-June. By mid-June, I mean between 15th to 18th of June. There is what is called the budget highlights and revenue raising measures. They are announced and introduced into what we call a finance bill. That finance bill is what may woke so many people up. And this year we had a lot of contentions whether it was okay or not. But you can see now that when we are talking about a finance bill, we have come a long way, which began on 30th of August. And we have come a long way in mid-May, where we expected the committees to hear the views of the public regarding the bill, I mean the budget, and they incorporated the views of the people. So we'll be asking you at the end of the day, did you hear this year when people talked about, did you hear anything around mid-May regarding the budget, and did you give out your views and were they incorporated? So the issues around the finance bill, the appropriation bills, those are things that kick in from mid-May. When you get to, I mean, from mid-June, after that, we have those bills approved. After the bills have been approved, they vote on those. They vote on those bills, and this must be done within or between June and 30th of September each year. So this is one of those problems that is still in court in a case where I think I'm a party, where we are challenging some of these timelines because the timelines have been used to rubber stamp impunity, especially the date of 30th of June. The Constitution did not provide for it, but it is now being used to defeat some of the processes, and it is now being used to ambush the public participation in the on the budget itself, and public participation on a bill called the appropriations bill. So if you read the Constitution provides for it just says there shall be there shall be no law or no piece of no law or tax which is not um triggered by statute. So that is why we have to have a piece of legislation. The Constitution does not mention anything to do with a finance bill. However, it mentions a bill called an appropriations bill. An appropriations bill contains two things. Number one, it contains the estimates of revenue and estimates of expenditure. Estimates of revenue, it simply states that these are the sources we believe are going to give us money. And once we get this is the manner in which we are going to spend the money. So that one should be contained in an appropriations bill. Now, there has never been proper, or and even sometimes no public participation at all on that appropriations bill, which is the constitutionally mandated bill. The finance bill is a creation of the Public Finance Management Act, and whether it is a mere nomenclature is a debate, but the Constitution has no such nomenclature, but it has a nomenclature of the Appropriations Bill, which should give us to Appropriations Act. Again, this is a matter in court, and by the end of the year or next year, we are going to have a clarity regarding which one comes first. After that, what happens is that between June to 30th of September, the laws envisions a scenario where the finance bill has been enacted and approved. So where we are today is that we are between June 30th and September. So we are in July. The law says that the finance bill must be approved within 90 days of the appropriations bill. Appropriations bill is what I told you. There's a debate. For me, I'm of the view that appropriations bill should actually come before the finance bill, if at all, if we have to have a finance bill. But as it is today, we are seeing a scenario where we have a finance bill, then we have appropriations bill. Because of a misunderstanding of a decision that was rendered in a case that was Senator Omtara it's a 2019 matter. I have read that decision, and whatever Parliament is doing is not what the decision said. The decision interpreted a different thing. Again, there's a case in court. I would not want to discuss it because it is a live matter in court. So that is the budget making process for you. Um, Remember, what starts is that when we have stopped at 30th of June, we go back to what we did. That is the auditor now giving us uh, a report by 31st of December. But before that, we have October 21st, submission of the budget review and outlook paper to Parliament. By August, we have all those going on. So in short, we are in July. People feel like we have even had to do a strike to strike out the finance bill. But what you have to know is that by 30th of next month, which is August, we are going to begin a process for enacting the finance bill of 2025-2026. So you are going to see in what I'm going to discuss next why and how you can participate and be part of all these processes which you have seen involve yourselves. So if you are to summarize all that in terms of the timelines that we have mentioned, you can summarize the stages in the budget making process into four. And they are: number one, the budget formulation. Then for the formulated budget is approved. What follows is the implementation of that budget. Then we see the review of the budget and audit. That is the summary, if we were to summarize that process. So, what you need to know as a citizen, as a legislator, as whoever you are, that each year we are going to formulate a budget. What is a budget? We are simply saying of the collected resources, whether from taxes or borrowings, this is how it should be allocated. That budget goes through several stages, like you've seen, so that it can be approved. Once approved, we are now talking about implementation of that budget. And after implementation, auditor should be giving us reviews. Okay. So I'm going to tell you what maybe some of these things mean in real sense when we're talking about the budget formulation. I mentioned the budget policy statement. The budget policy statement is prepared by the National Treasury each year. What does the budget policy statement do? It sets out some of the strategies and priorities or goals of the government of the day. Each year, it says, this year we want to focus on fighting locusts in Mandera. This year we want to focus on this and these are our priorities. So there is the budget policy statement. It is taken to Parliament and it must be approved. If I were to be told to speak to legislators and to speak to lawyers, I would be quoting the provisions of Section 39 of the Public Finance Management Act that provides in a prescriptive manner the aspect of considerations. How do you consider those budget policy statements? So there must be evidence of consideration, and consideration here means that these strategies were actually carefully investigated, analyzed, and Parliament approved of them. What follows in the budget formulation is what we have seen regarding stakeholder consultation and public participation. Stakeholder consultations here mean that we have several parastatals, we have several departments, we have several agencies, of the national government. All these agencies, they do their budgets, they do their proposals, they requisition for whatever they need. So when you need to prepare any budget, they have to be consulted. So that is what I term as a stakeholder consultation. This has also been a major challenge, and is a subject of litigation in the finance case, Finance Act case of 2023, where we were asking that how comes the National Treasury is doing the budget for the Kenya Railways, for example, or doing the budget for other parastatals. Yet, according to the constitution, according to the rules, this budget should be emanating from those agencies. Then they're submitted or consolidated as stakeholder consultation results. Okay, that's a story for another day. So we have those stakeholder consultations and public participation, which happen in stages and timelines that I've showed you above, and I'm going to restate them. So the aspect of public participation is now well entrenched within the Constitution of Kenya 2010. It is inalienable. Public participation is mandatory. It is not discretionary at any given point. So Article 1 of the Constitution, which provides for the sovereignty of the people. Article 3, which requires every person, including every officer or courts, um, to defend that particular constitution. Article 10, where now the aspect of public participation is expressly provided for. Article 201, which I'm going to see, which provides for the principles of public finance and all that. And Article 225, which I'm going to read later, when explaining the aspect of public participation. So I've discussed the aspect of formulation. So you are going to see that the issue of public participation starts from formulation itself. So at the point of formulating a budget, the people are to be consulted and are required to give their voices. What follows is now the what follows now is the what I call approval. So we take all that to Parliament. The budget is presented by the Cabinet Secretary, and what does the Parliament do? They do their debates. We expect that they should be scrutinizing the budget proposals. How do they do them? They do them through parliamentary committees. Now, in those parliamentary committees, we have a number. We have the Budget and Appropriations Committee, we have the departmental committees, we have the there is also this committee today in the National Assembly. It was created in this 13th Parliament, called the Public Debt Committee. For the first time, we're having that committee where its role is to look at the debt of the country, the borrowing aspects of the government, which is very, very important. So the National Assembly will be scrutinizing those things through those committees before the full house, as we are going to see as we continue. So again, from here, when we're talking about the budget approval through those committees, we are going to see that there is still the aspect of public participation, because these committees sometimes invite stakeholders, sometimes they require the input of the public. What follows is now implementation of the budget. How do you implement the budget once approved? Again, the theme allocation of funds. We are not talking about the how we are going to go ahead and distribute the funds that we have been given. So how are the funds distributed? We get what is to be given to the ministries, whichever agencies. So that is where you hear there is this much money given to the office of the first lady. There is this much money given to the office of the president. Much money given to county governments. This much money given to all that. So that is what we call the allocation of funds now. Okay. So that particular process of distribution of those resources is now left to the to actually it happens automatically, because the budget states what it wants to do and how it wants to do it, when it wants to do it, and where. So by the time the budget has been approved, we see a concept, or the stage of implementation. We are talking about implementation of that budget. The Another important thing that should be done is now the monitoring and evaluation of the implementation of that budget. How is it how is it being done? Are the funds being used effectively as suggested, as proposed, as approved? This is a very important step, and it is one of those steps that any active citizen should be able to play role in trying to ensure that these funds are used effectively. Like we're going to see later, some of the ways of ensuring some of these things are very simple. You only need to be alert. What is the difference this year and other years is because this year somebody chose to read about the Finance Act, and they felt the pain, or they felt pinched too hard, and they chose to speak up. That is what brought all the debate. There was nothing unique, there was nothing different in 2024 2025 budget or finance bill. In fact, if you ask me, if you compare that bill with the 2023 2024, the 2023-2024 was worse. But what is the difference? The difference is that this year some people chose to read, some people chose to speak about it. So we have the still concerning the monitoring and evaluation, we have the Office of the Auditor General that is mandated to conduct those audits and ensure the proper use of those public funds. I would wish to restate the timeline of 31st of August, where the auditor gives their report, and that is an annual exercise. So another day I would want to talk about the types of audits that we can have in a country. There are up to four types of audits, and who can do which audit, who can requisition for which audit, and all those very, very important aspects and concepts for everybody to know. We also have another way of oversight, that is through the parliamentary route, where we have the Public Accounts Committee, Public Investment Committee, and the Public Debt Committee. They do reviews. They review those audit reports. The goal is to ensure accountability. Whether this is achieved is another question. What should they look out for? They look out for the discrepancies, then give out their recommendations. So, if there are any issues that are identified in that report, the committee is expected to bring out to the parliament for the issue now to be debated on the floor and be addressed accordingly. So, who are the key players? I try to capture this thing in a sense that you see where you need to fall, because at the end of the day, what I wanted to talk about is public participation, but you need to know a few other things. Who are the key players in all that we have seen? We have seen the executive, we have seen the legislature, we have seen the Chapter 15 entities. Those are the independence offices. We have seen the common mwananchi. We have seen the aspect of public participation. Now, the executive does this through the national treasury and the line ministries and departments. Like I told you, the budget actually should be the requisitions made by each department, where if it is the tourism will be telling you this is what we need and we need to go this route. If you're talking about um, transport, the transport sector will be saying this is what we need and all that and all that. And there are other processes involved in that way, in those particular departments that will give them what to bring. The legislature, we have seen their role. There's a whole debate around what is the distinction between National Assembly and the Senate when it comes to budget. Do we need to take our budget in the National Assembly only, or we need to have it go both to both the National Assembly and the Senate? That's a question for lawyers. It's a question going on. We have independent offices under the Constitution, offices like the IEBC, offices like the Teacher Service Commission. All those offices, they are I categorize them as Chapter 15 entities because they are established under Chapter 15 of the Constitution. The Constitution does not envision them as part of the executive. They are neither part of the legislature. They are never part of the judiciary. So they're somewhere. Okay. So that is where we have people like Office of the Controller of the Budget, or Auditor General, the Controller of Budget. All these people help us and are very integral in the budget making process. So, talking about public participation, like I said, public participation is provided for expressly under Article 10 of the Constitution, Article 10, Clause 2. Article 221, Clause 5 makes it in mandatory terms mandatory for the National Assembly in reviewing those budget estimates, which I had discussed earlier, all those things that are provided for up there, it is required that the public's opinions and views are taken care of. So the Constitution says that in discussing and reviewing the budget estimates, the National Assembly shall seek representations. Representations here means opinions of the people and their views from the public, and the recommendations shall be taken into account when the committee makes its recommendations to the National Assembly. Again, if I had opportunity to talk to our legislators, I would be highlighting the word representations and explaining what it means. I would be highlighting the word taken into account and explaining what it means and asking whether it actually happens. I would be talking about making recommendations and questioning whether they actually do it. These are some of the things you, after the end of this discussion, should be able to see a way of asking your area MP, for example, in the sense of bringing them to uh, be accountable in what they do. So, what is the role of public participation in the budget making process? First, we have seen that public participation is part and parcel of each and every process, whether formulation, whether approval, whether implementation, whether monitoring and evaluation. It all boils down to public participation. It all boils down to somebody being awake. Public participation simply means that you have donated your power, but you have retained your logic and your senses to see whether these people are doing what you sent them there to do. So I ask myself, what is the role of the civil society in all this? Civil society here, I mean, those organizations like Linda Vijana Initiative that have come out to say that we are here for the interest of the public. If you're not going to help us to do public participation, then you're not helping us in any way, because somebody does not become wise or wiser than anyone else just because they occupy a particular position. They are there as representatives. We have seen doctors, medical doctors, going to Senate, going to National Assembly, becoming MCS. That one does not mean that they know even the names of all the uh, kinds of fertilizers that somebody can have or use, or they have any knowledge at all regarding poultry farming and all those things. So what happens is that we, the poultry farmers, still do our poultry farming and we have the knowledge, but we have chosen one person to represent us. How do you guarantee that these people are merely representing you and not now ruling you? So the aspect of representation, we need a lot of civil society uh, coming up and chipping in terms of guaranteeing or promoting and protecting the aspect of public participation. Now, what are there some mechanisms for public input and feedback? That is one of the discussions that we have been able to see in the 2024-2025 financial year, where we are now seeing people are awake. People got up when the process has ended. They only had the finance bill, they never heard about the budget. So they have woken up. They want to give their input, but the time is up. The time is up, and all that. So all those mechanisms for public input and feedback, they need to be streamlined. And the only way you are going to streamline them is when you make it easy for people to follow this process and know about them. So I ask myself and present some of the challenges in the budget making process in Kenya as we have seen. I see four main challenges. The first challenge is that we have no transparency and accountability. No transparency. Some of the questions that have been presented to courts before are that we have opinions from the public. These opinions from the public are not taken into account as the Constitution envisages them being taken into account, or are trashed, or we have clauses arising from nowhere or being put after the public participation. So these are the clauses that were not formulated by the people, not implemented, not approved by the people, not implemented by the people, and should that stand, things like those. The aspect of public participation has been reduced to a mere public relations exercise. Public relations exercise here means that for the sake of it, so that it is seen as done. Okay. Then we have the challenge of revenue collection and allocation. Is it efficient? Is it equitable? That is a debate for another day. But one of the challenges we have in Kenya today in our budget making process is the issue of distribution of resources. In all this budget, we hear we have 4.2 trillion. Where is it going? Who is it benefiting? Today, one of the issues that came out was the renovation of houses of the deputy president, the renovation of the house of the president, the travel, the entertainment, and all those, that is a question of allocation. Where are we taking it? Then the issue of revenue collection, like I pointed out at some point, that there has been a very irregular process in Kenya where we are having no uh, we are having no appropriation act before we talk about a finance act. So in the appropriation act, if you read the constitution under Article 220 and 221, it says that there shall be an appropriation act that spells out the revenue on the one side and expenditure on the other side. So if we don't talk about revenue collection, we only talk about expenditure. So the problem in Kenya is that we start by coming up with expenditure so that we look for where to get the revenue. But the constitution envisions a scenario where we begin with having the revenue, then we say, okay, from the revenue we have, this is how much we can spend. So we're basically doing the opposite by passing the enactment of Appropriation Act at the right time. And this has been perpetuated by the irregular and misconceived timeline of 30th of June of each year as the timeline for consideration of appropriation bill, which happens uh, after the finance. So that is one of the issues that, again, like I said, it is an issue before court, and within some time we're going to have that question resolved. Talk about corruption and mismanagement of funds. I don't think someone understands corruption better than you. Today, every Kenyan understands corruption, and nobody understands it better than themselves. So I want to trust wherever you are, you will understand corruption better than myself. But what should we do as Kenyans, as anybody who is interested in having a just and fair society? We need to innovate some unique measures of preventing misuse of those public resources. So if we're going to manage whatever we have very well, then there's going to be enough for all of us. If you're going to manage everything we have well, there's going to be enough for all of us. What are some of the initiatives that um, are going on in Kenya in terms of reforms and developments? We are seeing a call for more transparency in terms of accessing the budget information. All these information that are given today in terms of those timelines, I doubt if so many people understand it. I doubt if people understand that next month, by 30th of August, we are going to be starting to talk about the budget for 2024, 2025, 2024, 2025. Okay, so we need to do that. We need to talk about technological advancements in the areas of e-procurement, maybe to guarantee transparency. Again, I must say that if you look at how our public procurement is done today, there has been serious implementation of the e-procurement systems. Are they working? Are they not working? That is a big area that people should need to investigate. So those are, to me, the main initiatives, because if everyone is able to access the budget information, and everybody knows that this is what I'm looking for in the budget, this is the stage where we are, and next week there's going to be this, then it will be very easy for people to follow and hold these people into account. So what would I propose as an individual? I would propose that we don't need, even in all these innovations that we're trying to say we need, we don't need any law to tell us to do anything or not to do anything today. We have enough of that. What we need is to implement the laws that we have. We have a very good Public Finance Management Act. We have the rules of 2015. We have logic. What we need is to push for those implementation. How are you going to push? It is if you understand what is required, what is provided for in statutes, and you are able to even enlighten your own representative, because they also cannot be all knowing. they are mere representatives, and you also need to be assisting them. The next thing we need to do, so if I talk about implementation, that is on the part of our legislators, is on the part of the executive. But now, what is left to us? What can we do as individuals who are not in any public office? We must appreciate the importance of public participation, the engagement with our leaders, the understanding that they are not all knowing, they're just leading us, they're not dealing us, then it will be a good starting point. Again, I go back to what we have seen in the Finance Bill 2024. You have seen today the president spent the entire over 4 hours on the X space on Twitter to engage the people, to engage young people, to engage anybody, people they don't even know their names. They just, whether they are robots, they answer those questions. So we need better to do, we can do better. And we can capitalize on those mechanisms to ensure that there is public engagement. Again, I would repeat that participation of every individual must be an active one. You can't be participating by abstaining, okay? But we need the active participation bit of it. So if you're going to participate actively, which includes getting information, seeking information, and imparting information, which is one of the things I'm doing. I'm basically imparting information. If, based on the information I've been able to share today, you are able to challenge yourself to get to understand some of these processes and hold somebody into account, then we are going to achieve transparency in most of these processes. Again, I would end by saying that the aspects of accountability, transparency, and objectivity in governance cannot be achieved if the people retract and ignore their role as the sovereign. You have to take control, you have to take part, you have to be aware, be informed, and you have to say no when when you mean it, and that is provided for in our constitution. One day we should be able to talk about the budget making process in our county governments. I dare say that there is more rotten uh, processes. I would not call it process because they are already processes that have been enacted by National Assembly. I would say that they are more interesting or more shocking missteps and violations or contraventions of those rules and the constitution that happen at the county level. All these you see, after all these that you see in the national budget making process, the money goes to the county governments. What the county governments do is to also go through a similar process as the one we have seen for national government. So each county will be having their clockwork for their budget for that particular year, which is an annual exercise. So we also need to understand the budget making process at the county level because that one affects you directly, and you have more immediate control in terms of holding your area MCA into account and pushing them to make sure that the budget is more organized, the budget is relevant, the budget is one that guarantees transparency and use of resources in a good way. So I would say that having understood how this process can be complex at the national level, I would say that there is a similar process in each county, and we, the people of Kenya, who have been categorized into some units, the devolved systems, you need to understand and be able to participate in all this process. And if we participate, maybe these people they just come up with bad laws and poor policies and poor plans because they don't have the knowledge. That does not hold true in other instances where there have been accusations or allegations that the views, good views, were presented in the public participation, when they were sought only to be neglected or rubbished. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg to stop there, and I will be able to take any of your questions. I beg your pardon for taking more than 50 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Personally, I was hoping we would just continue and continue. This is the second time I'm privileged to listen to someone with the right knowledge about the budget issues. Last time, during public participation, I attended a session where there was a constitutional lawyer and also um, someone who had worked at the Treasury, and he's a fraud expert. Actually, has several petitions he has taken to Parliament in these issues, SGR and others. Before we go to the question by Gracie, two of them there, I have mine. The president has appointed a task force, and you've just said the Office of the Auditor General is supposed to conduct the audit. So, what is that? Firstly, it's unconstitutional, and why is he doing that? Yet there is the office that is said to do that. And you're muted. You're muted. Actually, it gives me a chance to now say my second question, which is a bit related to Gracie's. Immediately after they did not, it was not approved, the finance bill. We've seen several government officials saying we won't be able to pay some teachers, and then another one, there won't be salaries for counties. So, and the tax has been collected, the money is there. What has that got to do with us saying that the finance bill was not getting passed? Thank you. You're
Okay,
muted.
I think you can hear my voice now.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay. The move by the president is indeed an interesting one. As a lawyer, I doubt its legality and constitutionality because let me just get to my constitution. It should be Article 2. Let me just read so that we are at the same page. Whether I'm sure, just in case I've forgotten. But my view is that that is an unconstitutional move because we have the Auditor General who is mandated to do the audits as an annual exercise. Those audits, there's a framework used to present them for implementation, for action. Audit has been done, so what? Now, if you come up with any task force, for example, they prepare what is known as as a report. That report is to be tabled in Parliament. That report will have no force of law any day, whichever task force you hear of, whether it's the Shakaula task force, whether the Maraga-led task force on what about police, that thing can go nowhere until it is tabled in the National Assembly for approval and for I don't know what to do with it. Whether you're talking about the NADCO report, the NADCO here, we're talking about the talks between the UDA and the ODM and the aftermath of 2022 elections, it has to go to Parliament. So what that has to do with the constitutional provisions regarding the Office of the Auditor General, I believe there's a big inconsistency. In fact, there have been judgments or decisions from the courts declaring null and void the creation of those task force because they have no force in law. Number two, it is another route for looting public money because that task force is going to be facilitated. Who is going to benefit? So what they usually do is that once, like what I've seen with the membership of those of the task force, even in the present talks, is that those who are very vocal about this Gen Z revolution and all that have been taken there. What do? They muzzle you up. So it's just a framework for legitimizing budget that is used to sanitize a Gen Z to stop talking about some of these things. Again, like I said, in some, I don't agree that that process is constitutional. It can be challenged in court, and we'll see how it goes. Please remind me the second question. There was a second bit of your question.
Yeah, my second bit relates to the first question by Gracie. Her question is, I hear when the finance bill is not passed, it means there's no funds to run the government. And then I added, they already said they won't pay some 100,000 teachers. And then I remember a girl saying there won't be salaries for county officers, people who work in county. So I'm like, and they still collect our taxes daily. So how come is it that there's no money, or what were they planning to do? Why should people not
Oh,
get paid and some services not run? And they've actually, all over, the MPs are saying now no development in this part will happen because Mulikata finance bill. I'm like, is that even professional, or exactly what is going on?
okay, very well. Maybe I need to define what a finance bill is. Like I said, we have all seen that a finance bill is a result of the national budget process. It is a result of that process. So this is an annual exercise. Again, in my definition, I think you can see my PowerPoint presentation there, is that we are talking about each year we need to look at what are our sources of revenue and what do we need to spend on. So it means that at, at no given moment will we have a government that does not have money, because each year the previous finance budget or the annual budget gave some sources of revenue and provided for expenditure in those particular areas. So money will still trickle in. For example, I'll give you three examples. Last year alone, we came up with the aspect of the digital tax, digital content. Now, in that tax, it does not stop this year by you saying that, okay, I'm not enacting the Finance Act of 2024, it is taken back to Parliament. That one does not mean that we have stopped collecting money from digital. Another example is the affordable housing levy, for example, which succeeded through other means by enactment of the Affordable Housing Act. If that is still continuing under that particular legislation, then nothing stops it. So there's no single day that the government is going to say that because you have stopped a finance act of a particular year, there's no source of revenue. What I'm trying to say in so many words is that a finance act or a finance bill or any financial year budget comes up with new revenue streams to either lower the taxes that you want to collect or increase the taxes that you want to collect. So what it does is, okay, now what happens? You have said now the president has not signed that, so there's no money. The Constitution envisioned such a scenario. So the answer is in Article 223 of the Constitution, which provides for what is called as supplementary appropriation. So the Constitution says that if, for whatever reason, the National Assembly or the government is unable to come up with that Finance Act, or in several other scenarios that have been provided, you then slash the national budget by half. Then you go to the consolidated fund, which is that the collected and all those borrowing and all that. So you are going to finance half of whatever was proposed. So what should happen right now is the budget that we have, we finance half of it from the framework around Article 223, where we have to have, we can still get half of the budget of what was budgeted for. So I think what the constitution was trying to put is that it was putting a government on toes so that they make sure they have followed all the right processes and that there is no problem. There are so many other instances or scenarios that will lead the government to do a supplementary budget, but one of them is where we are today, where the Finance Act has failed. So the argument that, oh, there's no Finance Act, there's no money, is incorrect, because money does not stop. In fact, the Finance Act of 2023 did not mention the scrapping off of any particular tax that was put in the last year. And even if it mentioned, it has not passed. So where does the money go? The money that was being collected already. So whatever, I think what I'm trying to say in so many words again is that we have a government in Kenya, and each government has been so destined to do it that we come up with expenses and or expenditure without coming up with the sources of revenue. So then we look for sources of revenue to finance expenses. But our constitution, in fact, let me read it for you. I think these days people understand constitution more than anything else. I want to read for you Article 221, Clause 1. It says, at least 2 months before the end of each financial year, the Cabinet Secretary responsible for finance shall submit to the National Assembly estimates of revenue. Get that? Estimates of revenue. So you're saying these are the sources of money that we're going to have. That's where you begin from. And estimates of expenditure for the national government. So once you have the revenue on the one side, those who have done accounting, you know we have the debit and credit side. They must balance at the end of it all. Whatever you do, the two must balance unless there is a very slim error. So we have a government that only has a budget with the expenditure. So once you have expenditure, you look for the money. That's not it. So the concept of living large, the concept of playing within the rules and living within the means is in the constitution. The constitution says, look for the means. Where are you? We can raise this. So I think I would stop it there in terms of answering that question.
Actually, I feel sometimes they're treating us like primary school children, like we know nothing, and they're the ones who know. And like we won't do this because you didn't do that, yeah. And we have a question from Gracie. Oh, and what did the president ascend the appropriation bill? Because he's talked of a supplementary budget appropriation, but I thought he ascended the appropriation bill for the finance bill that we rejected.
And no, 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 not really. Like I said, for me, I
Mm.
have a big problem with the issue of appropriation bill and appropriation act. In terms of the timeline that has been imposed, which is the 30th of June, that by 30th of June each year, there must be appropriation so that you are appropriating the Finance Act or the Finance Bill. I think it was put that way so that you are able to defeat public participation on the Appropriation Act. Okay. So these estimates of revenue and estimates of expenditure are what should be reduced into law. Because remember, very laughable again, very laughable. The president is assenting to a bill to estimates that were not reduced into what we call a bill. So a president cannot sign letters, a president cannot sign recommendations, a president cannot sign policy, all those. For there to be law, it must be an act. But there can be no act that is not stemming from the bill. We did not have all this in terms of, in fact, it has been at practice since 2011. The constitution was enacted in 2010. 2011, we have had the problem 12, 13, 14. But again, you realize that we have never had changes in the regime. The same government we had since 2013 is the same government up to now. It is the same thing, same people, same laws. So you will not be able to beat them easily. But what I'm saying is there is the appropriation bill. How they have tweaked it is that after you have the Finance Act, you enact the appropriations bill so that you are able to spend that money. That's how I would summarize it. Again, defending or explaining what the president has done is difficult for me because I don't believe in that process. And I'm actually a party to a proceeding that is presently ongoing where we believe we are going to scrape off that particular madness. Yes.
I'm developing a headache as you continue. Gracie is asking, will there be another chance for public participation that the bill has gone back to Parliament?
Will there be?
Another chance for public participation?
Um, Public participation, like I said, I don't know how they are going to go about the bill because, as far as I'm concerned, actually, there is a matter in court has been filed. But as far as I'm concerned, as a lawyer, my understanding of the the procedures is that once the bill has been passed, as was done by the National Assembly, it does not have any authority to do anything apart from what is contemplated under Article 115, Clause 4, which provides that there can be a scenario where the president has referred a bill back with the recommendations. What the parliament should do, or the National Assembly in this case, is to either agree with him or to agree with him fully or to agree with reservations at the same time. So if they agree fully, because the president recommended deletion of all the clauses, what these people needed to do was to agree fully with all that. Then we are going to take it to the president. Then the president assents it. So what that would do is that we would have what is called a shell law. A shell law is a dead law. It's like a mother of an aborted kid. You are a mother, but you are a mother of the dead. So that is how we come up with the aborted laws. So that would take us to square one. It would take us to square one. What is square one? We have the budget. So we pick it from that point. We pick it from the budget. So at any given moment, if the process is nullified, we go back to the budget. Then look at the estimates of revenue against estimates of expenditure, enact an appropriation bill, pass it. That is where we do the public participation. If it becomes law, we proceed with it. This issue of Finance Act is a mere nomenclature created under the Public Finance Management Act, which is, well, I cannot call it unconstitutional, but to the extent that it becomes inconsistent with Article 221 and 220, then it becomes a conduit of embezzlement of public money by hijacking the process. So as of now, if where the bill is, there will be. If you ask me whether there will be public participation, I don't know how they're going to fashion it. Again, it is unprecedented. We have never seen such a scenario before. But if they pick it up from the budget, then we'll be good to go. But if they take it back to public participation, where you saw, well, it's a mere PR exercise. They call you, okay, what do you have to say? Say it and go. In fact, maybe I'll need to share it. What made me, in 2023, I was a student at the Kenya School of Law. I heard about the public participation regarding the Finance Bill 2023-2024. I submitted memoranda and presented. Fortunately, I was called to go and present. So when I went there, these people asked me to introduce myself. They told me, "Oh, you're a student, okay? No wonder. Everything you have said here is nonsense. Yeah, I think you really need to learn a lot of things." As I said, that was nice and not nice at the same time. So I said, okay, let us meet in court. That is what I told those people. Fortunately, at page 2, 324, 325, 326, if you read that report, you're going to see our, our comments and some of the things that were actually taken up. Out of the 15 issues that we had, only 4 were rejected. So of the 4 that were rejected, we were able to litigate them in court, and we won in several fronts in that particular case. And I was there asking them. Actually, I was fortunate to meet some of them. Ask them, "Do you still believe that I need to do some reading in some press?" And we were sharing now good laughters. But what I'm saying is this: the public participation has been a mere PR exercise, and do not look at an old person or a young person or what. Just read, look at the constitution written in plain language. Do you agree with it or not? If you don't agree, look for another means of challenging the process. Yes.
Thank you. There's a question from Ivy Omolo seeking clarification in the event that the finance bill becomes an act. Will the Finance Act 2023 cease to exist?
Um, like I said, there is no expiry. There is no expiry date in any finance act. We have expiry dates in some pieces of legislation, but the Finance Act is not one of them. It does not come with an expiry date. So even if we were to have a Finance Act in 2011, and have none until today, we would still be having money. The thing is, like I said, what a Finance Act does is that it creates or drops some of the revenue streams. Revenue streams. It's simply saying, where do we get the money? Where do you get? So, in fact, you go to any finance act, it is an amendment bill. It amends various laws. It creates nothing. It simply amends. So, for example, if you look at the Employment Act, the Employment Act was amended by the Finance Bill 2023 to create the 1.5% that they were proposing for the affordable housing. Okay, so it amends a particular provision. It goes to the Companies Act, amends a particular thing. It goes to the Income Tax Act, amends a particular thing. So it does not stop in any way. It doesn't stop in a way. So even if we were to have one piece of legislation for one set of amendments in 2011, and we see it as working, then we don't need, if there's nothing new, we don't need another law. So the government does not stop if the Finance Act 2024 is stopped, whether by court or by Kenyans. Like I said, maybe I need to restate. Our problem is that we begin from having expenditure without getting our revenues right, revenue streams, sources of revenue. That is where it all starts from. The budget formulation. You start with the budget policy statement. The budget policy statement, what are its contents? It is the strategies the government is having and their strategic plan generally. One thing I also need to emphasize, as I said, is that all this process is replicated at the county governments, at the county levels. These monies that we see in the national government are then devolved to the counties. The counties undergo almost the same process. You also need to be awake and take charge at the county levels. Yes.
Um, from Francis, there's another one from Ivy. So then it is just an amendment. Okay, that one you've addressed. Francis Muzozo is asking, you've said that the correct procedure is to have the funds before presenting a budget, which is the opposite of what happens in this country. Can it be termed as unprocedural, and can it be challenged in a court of law after passing it in parliament?
My answer to those sets of questions are that yes. Whether it can be challenged, there is actually a court case where I was a party. We challenged the process of enactment of the Finance Act of 2023. One of our key arguments is that you cannot have the budget, you cannot have the Finance Act without having the appropriations. And what are the contents of the appropriations? What does it mean, consideration by the National Assembly? What does it mean, the meaning of Article 39 of the Public Finance Management Act? So the judgment of that case will be delivered on the 31st of July this month. And we hope we are going to have, it is at the Court of Appeal. We won in the High Court partially, and we are waiting to get the verdict of the Court of Appeal. And we hope for the best. Whether or not we are going to, I mean, whichever the outcome, it is highly probable that there will be a Supreme Court determination on this question, and that will be my happiness. But I am sure whether we win or lose, because I'm sure if we win, the other side will go to the Supreme Court. I can say here categorically that if we lose, we are likely to go to the Supreme Court because those questions are everything that affects our lives as Kenyans. Once we have the aspect of, maybe let me start by saying, you have seen that public participation is everywhere. And what makes it difficult for the government is when they go back to the people to explain what they are trying to do. The math is not mathing. That is why they are scared. If they were to do, if they were to do public participation on the Appropriations Act, remember it says we have to begin with the budget. In fact, let me read for you this particular provision of the Constitution. So that if we were to do public participation, it will be done in 6 different stages before the finance bill. If they insist on the finance bill, then the finance bill will be the sixth invitation of the people to participate and give their views. That makes it very difficult, very difficult. And you know, the more you talk about something, the more people research, the more they become wiser. This year alone, we saw the Finance Act, Chat GPT, informing everyone about everything so that they are able to think. So if we were to go that route, we are not going to have this punitive taxation, and people are going to be very alert. And whatever the outcome of the case, like I've told you, we are going to have a big win. And once there has been that determination, there will be a lot of accountability in terms of this process. I was trying to read, I want to find you Article 220 so that you arm yourself with this one next time you're discussing. Read Article 220, Clause 1. It provides for what is the Constitution says form, content, and timings of the budget. Article 220. Form, content, and timings of the budgets. There are so many budgets there. Like I told you, division of revenue and all those which I didn't want to discuss in this particular uh, talk today. Then you go to Article 221. Article 221. Okay. Before that, not before that, you just go straight to Article 221. I want to cut this short. Go to Article 221, Clause 5. And this is how it reads 221, Clause 5. In discussing and reviewing the estimates, the committee shall seek representations from the public. That is one of the points. Remember, this one is still at the committee stage. The committee, we have not even come to all this that they're calling, oh, what the general public is invited and all that. This committee must seek these representations, and they must show that they took into account meaningfully. So one of the questions that are before the Court of Appeal is that what does it mean to take into account? What is meaningful public participation? Is there a threshold? Okay, so that is, I think I would end my answer to that question there.
Yeah, and hearing the president saying that those who voted yes were heroes, just clearly saying our public participation did not matter. So it is quite unfortunate. I think that's the end of it. I don't know. You can type in the chat if it was a helpful session, because to me it was awesome. And I don't know, what are we having next month, the first Friday, Benson? Are we having types of audits or recalling MPs? What is the direction of this? Because I feel we need a series of this civic education. So what are we discussing next? Type of audits or something else should come before that?
Thank you very much. I must appreciate this. You sound like we are done. I want to talk
Yeah,
about
yeah.
three
We
things.
are done. We are done with the questions here, and we are way beyond the time we usually have, the 1 hour. So that's what I was asking, because you conclude by saying what will be the next topic for the next Friday, the first Friday of next month. So I was asking, will we have types of audits, or I'm planning to have someone explain how we go about recalling MPs? Yeah, and everybody's typing, quite educative. I'm glad to have been here. It was awesome, very helpful. So what are we talking about next?
I think we need to, first of all, thank you very much for thinking about this. We need to, I would do a 7-day seminar on public finance and, alone, so that you understand some of the concepts. There are so many things that are interconnected. We have only talked about the clockwork, the timelines, and
Yeah,
all that. There are so many things people need to understand.
yeah.
Um, so things like recall and all that, I think those are very simple things that somebody can simply read and write. But when understanding public finance, I think if you give me to weigh between the types of audits and recall of MPs, I would go for types of audits, because these are things that we are able to do without big struggle, and there would be very they will be very impactful in terms of what we can be able to achieve with them.
Someone is asking that you share your contact. They have some questions that they may need to ask you later. That's Mr. Tabus. So do you want to share your email address? You can type it on the chat, Wakili.
Um, I will see. I'll tap it on the chat. Yes. So
Fine.
for me, I would. You speaking?
No, Gracie, do you have something to say? Me, I'm just excited because of all this knowledge. We have been taken advantage because of not reading, and the Constitution has been there. Yeah, so Mr. Tabus, I think you've seen his email.com. You can, I think, also share your website. It's also another resource, and also your LinkedIn. I've been learning a lot from your LinkedIn. Please share. And kindly, Lewis, welcome. You joined late. Yeah. I don't know. Your
I
LinkedIn
think,
handle, we find it on the website, yes?
yeah, if you go to my website, you'll get all my contacts. Maybe one thing I wanted to say is that if we are going to continue with the zeal that we have seen this year and tweak it a bit to make it to the forums where conversations are actually held, not in the streets. I'm not saying anything against mandamanos, but I'm trying to say if we can also refocus that energy in another strategic way, then we are going to be a country like no other. Elsewhere, I have written a paper where we were arguing, it was a joint authorship with a classmate of mine, where we are arguing that going forward, and we want to see this in next year's budget, there must be a human rights impact assessment on every budget. So once you have come up with those sources of revenue that you're proposing, accompany that with the impact, the human rights impact assessment on it. Another thing we are proposing is that let us have a maximum, a sailing point, so that we have to measure the point where the scissors hands, or how deep scissors hands can go or get into our pockets. If we are going to have these conversations regularly and enlighten people, then we are going to be a force to reckon with, especially if we talk about them in the right spaces, in the right ways, at the right time. Not, let us move towards preventive measures. They are better than correctional. So organizations like your organization, the Linda Vijana Initiative, and all that should come up and organize the people to get some of the knowledge that they should have. Thank you very much for the session. I hope I answered all the questions. I would welcome more in other forums.
Asante sana. We are going to sleep tonight more informed, and we are continuing to read the Constitution cover to cover. So thank you so much, and thank you for everyone who has stayed. Apologies, we've really gone beyond the usual time, and I request Brenda, can you please pray for us? Brenda Otieno.